Good evening, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to News in Focus. My name is Faraz Batla. We'd like to thank you, the viewer, for staying with us here on Hilaal TV, DSTV channel 347. Now, more than 100 aid and human rights groups have called on governments across the world to take action on Israel's forced mass starvation of Palestinians in Gaza, including by demanding an immediate and permanent ceasefire and lifting all restrictions on humanitarian aid. 109 organizations, includes Mercy Corps, Norwegian Refugee Council, Doctors Without Borders, and the groups warning that deepening starvation of the population was spreading across the besieged enclave. Now, one organization that has been doing extensive research and, of course, has their team on the ground in Gaza is Oxfam. And joining me now via Zoom, I'd like to welcome the policy head of that organization in the Occupied Palestinian Territory, Bushra Khalidi. Bushra, absolute pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I mean, Bushra, I think there's no words to really describe the situation, but of course, you know, we have to speak on it given the famine that is occurring in Gaza. I think, to put it quite bluntly, it is as bad as it has ever been since the start of this genocide in October 2023.
Yeah, I mean, there's no other way. I mean, I struggle to find the words to describe the horror. I've got my family-in-law in Gaza. I've got, of course, all my colleagues in Gaza. And I've never really had to speak to colleagues. And I mean, you know, they're calling me and they're saying they're hungry. They're telling us that they're coming to work with nothing in their stomachs. They've not eaten for days. So that they could leave whatever bread they have left, or a little bowl of soup or a bowl of lentils that they have left for their children. And this is the story of every Palestinian in Gaza right now. You know, at Oxfam here, we're not just witnessing this crisis. We're living it through our colleagues and the communities that we serve in Gaza. Like I said, one staff member told us that she went to work without food. She'd only had one single falafel the whole day just so that she could keep going. And another person said, these days, I feel no amount of interviews or facts or pleas have any effect. I think we're beyond that. And we've heard, of course, of parents boiling tree leaves, to feed their children. We've heard from aid workers who burnt their clothes to cook the last scraps of lentils for their kids. We've heard a mother saying that my son died of hunger. Literally, his body couldn't take it anymore. It's a deliberate policy of starving an entire population to collectively punish them. And half of this population are children. I mean, what are we doing to an entire generation, and how is the world allowing this?
Yeah. I mean, I want to touch on that. I mean, you watch, obviously, broadcasts, especially, you know, when it comes to the Qatari broadcast Al Jazeera, which has shown children without baby formula, children that are being born. I read a report where it's so difficult for mothers to give birth because they do not have the necessary nutrition to allow for the natural birth to take place, let alone the C-section that needs to happen. You know, in the history of war zones or genocides, I think this is as horrible as it can get, and probably, I would like to think, more unprecedented that we've seen in the history of humanity.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely unprecedented in modern history, and in the, you know, in what we call modern warfare. This is something that we've not seen, at least in the last 30, 40 years. I mean, you know, we heard of babies rotting in incubators in Gaza. We've heard of mothers being shot down while they were carrying white flags. We've heard of families, you know, digging their family relatives from under the rubble. And now we're hearing that, you know, we're talking about starvation, but starvation is linked to so many different things, right? It's not just about food. It's about not having access to water, not having access to healthcare, not having access to hospitals. Like you said, mothers are having C-sections with anesthesia. We're hearing that bloody diarrhea cases have jumped by 302% in Gaza. We have carried out analysis on kind of the spread of waterborne diseases. We're hearing that acute water diarrhea has risen by 150% in Gaza. We've heard of jaundice, hepatitis B, spiking by 101% in Gaza. These are diseases that thrive when people are denied clean water, sanitation, and healthcare. This is not a natural disaster. It's completely political. And now we have over 420,000 pallets of aid that are enough to fill 101 football fields that are sitting in warehouses across the region. I mean, can you believe that I am about an hour and a half drive away from Gaza?
Yes.
There is an abundance of food and water where I am. You know, and then we have an entire civilian, like defenseless population at this point, starving to death, and nobody does anything. And the problem is that every second and every hour that goes by, people are dying. So like action is was needed yesterday. So every minute that goes by without actual action being taken by the international community, children are dying in Gaza. Oxfam, our own operations, we have over 110,000 humanitarian items stuck in limbo, including water tanks, hygiene kits, soap, nappies, food parcels, and more. And Israel has deliberately denied the entry of these critical items like water and sanitation supplies and food. I mean, everything is collapsed in Gaza. It's an absolute horror, and it's deliberate. And this near total blockade that Israel imposed on Gaza since the March 2nd, it's not just preventing recovery, it's ensuring collapse. There's such a grim, deliberate inevitability to this crisis. Denying food and medicine and water and fuel. It's creating a public health time bomb. And Gaza is basically being turned into a dish for disease and death.
Yeah, and I mean, here's the thing, Bushra. I want to touch on the aid trucks that are sitting, whether it's at the Kirsharem border or even sitting in Rafah at this very moment. We had got video footage yesterday, early in the morning, of Israeli settlers that were practically attacking these trucks and trying to disrupt them from entering. I know there's drips and drabs that are coming in, and I think, let's face it, this is not enough for the population of Gaza at this moment. What we're seeing right now, of course, with this genocide, this is rubbing salt into the wounds of international law in terms of the fact that you have individuals who are taking the law into their own hands and saying, listen, we're going to disrupt any sort of aid that's going to come in. And on the other side, we're speaking of it, children are being malnourished, mothers, fathers, grandparents are being malnourished. I don't think we are seeing something as horrible as this as we've ever seen before. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm glad that you bring this up. I mean, it's not just the settlers blocking the aid. That's a fraction of the problem. We even have aid inside Gaza that we're unable to access as humanitarian organizations and UN agencies because the roads are too difficult, because the coordination, we don't have safe routes. How are we going to send our teams to active conflict zones to recuperate this aid, to deliver it to the most vulnerable so that they can make sure that it reaches when there's bombs falling over them and tank shelling all around and sniper shots all around? So our teams can't even access that aid that's inside Gaza because Israel has reoccupied essentially 88% of the Gaza Strip and now has confined almost 2 million people into 12% of what's rest, basically, of what's now. And these zones that have been basically reoccupied, we're unable to access them because they're so dangerous, and they will not give safe routes to humanitarian agencies to continue operating. And even if we did, the number of trucks we're seeing, I mean, like you said, it's a trickle. It's a drop in the ocean of needs. I mean, the entire Gaza Strip has been decimated, destroyed, erased. So we're talking about the needs are exponential. And so the settlers, I mean, the idea that, settlers can come and do this with full impunity, it kind of reminds you of what is happening in the West Bank, where I am here, where settlers, there's an average of 4 attacks a day by settlers across the West Bank in the last few months because it's a policy. It's a policy of violence. It's a policy of annexation. It's a policy of settlement expansion. And so some at times where the settler attacks, for example, will happen here in the West Bank against communities or villages around the West Bank, we will see the army do absolutely nothing. And at times even we will see the army engaging in the attacks against those communities and protecting effectively the settlers, whereby we don't know anymore who is the army, who is the settler. And so blurring those lines, basically. It's terrifying what's happening, the full impunity that settlers are able to act, both in, blocking some of those trucks, but most importantly, in the rampage attacks that they carry out on a daily basis in the West Bank, and with no restraint and no accountability. It's terrifying.
Bushra, unfortunately, we have run out of time. Absolute pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
That's Bushra Khalidi, policy head at Oxfam for the Occupied Palestinian Territory. Okay, so we're going to be staying with, obviously, the genocide in Gaza. A report from BDS has shown that coal exports from here, South Africa, has increased by 22.9% since January last year. I'm going to be speaking with Professor Patrick Bond with regards to this. Do stay tuned.